You know, the book Atlas Shrugged, it was about a society that became so taxed and government was so oppressive that some of the great entrepreneurs and capitalists fled to their own jurisdictions. So you know what, all you tax and spenders, we're just leaving. Well, the founder of PayPal, his name is Peter Thiel, he's a billionaire, and he has put $1.25 million in seed money into just this idea, a libertarian getaway, an island at sea that would be beyond the reach of taxing and spending governments. Is it just a fantasy island or a prospect of the future? Joining me now live from Bowling Green State University is our friend, Peter Jaworski, one of the great libertarians of Canada and the United States. Peter, thanks for being here on the show.
Hey, Ezra, thanks for having me on your program.
You know what? I just want to remind our viewers who you are. I mean, besides being a friend and a scholar and a libertarian activist, you host that yearly barbecue at your folks' place in Orono, Ontario, sort of a freedom festival. It's the Institute for Liberal Studies that was shut down by nosy bureaucrats. Do you want to give us a 1-minute update on that before we jump into this story?
Yeah, sure. Well, we were shut down. My parents were charged with running a commercial conference center on land zoned agricultural for the annual Liberty Summer Seminar. They dropped the charges after 9 months, after absolutely getting hammered in the media. They finally did drop the charges 9 months later, and we put on the Liberty Summer Seminar this year. We had 95 attendees, and it was the 11th annual one, and it was fantastic.
Well, I'm so pleased. But, you know, how ironic that your freedom barbecue, I call it a freedom barbecue, was picked on by nosy bureaucrats, because that's exactly what we're talking about here today, a place that Peter Thiel, at least, hopes is a refuge from nosy bureaucrats. Tell me a little bit more about this idea. I think he calls it seasteading, like homesteading, but at the sea. What do you know about it?
Well, Patri Friedman, who is the grandson of Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman and the son of fellow economist David Friedman, he's the founder of the Seasteading Institute. And the basic idea is to go out on an oil rig-like platform somewhere in international waters and to basically seastead, like homesteading, but out on the sea. And the goal is to be outside of the jurisdiction of any country and to basically have a libertarian island.
Huh. Now, who would run this? I mean, would there be a constitution, a freedom-infused constitution that would resolve disputes? I mean, we're looking right now at the screen at some artists' conceptions of this seasteading island. Some of these facilities would hold thousands of people. You're going to have crimes. You're going to need to raise some funds for defense, I would imagine. What would be the ruling law of some of these island cities?
Well, in principle, it can be any law you would like. So this idea is open not just to libertarians, except libertarians are taking the idea further. It's open to anybody who is grumpy about the current state of the laws in their country. In principle, anyone could purchase an oil rig platform, go out into international waters, and try to make a go of it. So you could sign any kind of constitution you would like, not just libertarian, but this idea, and the one that has gone the furthest, is the Libertarian Seasteading Institute idea.
Now, $1.25 million, it's a lot of money, but I would imagine that's just a drop in the ocean to start some of these huge platforms. I mean, some of those deep-sea oil rigs, those cost more than $1 billion, and that's not exactly a pleasant place to live. Peter, I just want you to be candid with me. Do you think this has any chance of success, or is it more just sort of a discussion starter, a conversation piece about what an ideal society should be? Does anyone actually think we'll be living on oil rigs just to be free?
Well, let me tell you a historical fact that you might find interesting. In 1967, Patty Roy Bates took a few of his pirate radio friends out into the seas and off the coast of England. They found an abandoned World War II structures, which happened to be in international waters. They got onto that international structure, that World War II structure, and they declared it the Principality of Sealand. Now, that happened in 1967, and they've been going strong for 40 years since. They have all the trappings of a kind of legitimate country. They issue currency, they issue passports, they fly a flag, they have a national anthem. So that, in a way, is a precedent. Now, it is a drop in the bucket, as you mentioned. The kinds of money that would be necessary to build a platform from scratch would be probably pretty enormous and much more than the $1.25 million that Peter Thiel has put into it. But nevertheless, there are abandoned platforms out in international waters. Somebody could take those over. Do I think it's a serious project? Yes, I do. Peter Thiel is putting a lot of money into it, and Patri Friedman sounds to me like a smart guy. I had a chance to speak with him a couple of years ago on a radio show that I hosted, and he struck me as a really smart fellow. And of course, with parents like David Friedman and a grandfather like Milton Friedman, I'm sure he learned quite a bit at the dinner table. So I wouldn't count him out. I'm optimistic. I'm not packing my bags, but I'm optimistic.
You know, it just dawns on me as I'm looking at these images that artists are conceiving for this, that maybe we already do have these enormous seasteading places to live. They're not oil rigs, they're massive cruise ships. I guess, I mean, theoretically, you could just have a super big luxury cruise ship. I mean, some of these things hold 2,000 people, and if you just kept replenishing it, you could always be at sea. So maybe it's not just some ugly stationary oil rig or some fantasy town, but maybe it's a moving town. What do you think of that?
I think that would be a great idea. There was a billion-dollar project to try to start a cruise ship just like that, a Libertarian cruise ship. It unfortunately went nowhere because it did require $1 billion. But maybe some smaller cruise ship could work. I don't know, Ezra.
We'll start with a dinghy. We'll start with the SS Ezra. It's a little dinghy. It's a little leaky. Look, what does it say, Peter, that about our society where taxes and government intervention is so oppressive that a true entrepreneur, like the founder of PayPal, that's a serious entrepreneur, feels it's necessary to hedge his bets and put $1.25 million down on some escape hatch? Like, basically, that's his panic button to get away from big government. Is that a sign that we're at the breaking point, that people are putting real money on a getaway plan like this?
I think it definitely points to a lot of frustration on the part of a lot of people. I think Daniel Smith's success out in Alberta might be pointing to something similar. There is a sentiment, I can sense, I guess, a kind of sentiment most prominently displayed in the Tea Party movement here in the United States, where I'm calling you from. So I do think that there is a great deal of frustration. Is it to the boiling point? I mean, it's enough to motivate someone like Peter Thiel to put over $1 million of his own money. We're not talking about government grants here. We're talking about his personal income, his personal money. He's putting over $1 million into this project. So I think there are a few John Galts. You mentioned Atlas Shrugged at the opening. I think there are a few John Galts ready to take a few entrepreneurs, wealthy ones at the beginning, but maybe some not-so-wealthy ones like you and I, Ezra, a little bit later on. And they're ready to call it quits with the U.S. and maybe even with Canada.
Peter Jaworski, economist at Bowling Green State University in Ohio, thank you for joining us today via Skype. We'll keep in touch and let us know if those bureaucratic bullies come by your folks' place anymore, okay?
I will, Ezra. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye, folks.